Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where we bring evidence, experience, and perspective to make sense of today's leading health challenges. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
It's Lindsay Smith-Rogers. Today, access to skilled nursing facilities for people with substance use disorders. Sally Friedman is the Senior Vice President of Legal Advocacy at the Legal Action Center, which fights discrimination against people with substance use disorders. Recently, she and her team reached a historic settlement in North Carolina on behalf of a man denied entry to a skilled nursing facility because of his substance use disorder. She speaks with Dr. Josh Sharfstein about the case and her client, who is anonymous, and is referred to throughout this episode as John Doe. Let's listen.
Sally Friedman, thank you so much for joining me on Public Health on Call.
It's my pleasure. Nice to be here today.
I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about yourself and the Legal Action Center.
Sure. So I am the Senior Vice President of Legal Advocacy at the Legal Action Center. We're a national nonprofit organization that uses legal and policy strategies to expand access to substance use disorder care and advocate for a health rather than a punitive approach to substance use disorder and HIV and to people who've been involved in the criminal legal system.
So how do cases come to your attention?
All kinds of ways. We get a lot of referrals from health and social service providers. People find us on the internet. And sometimes we work with legal organizations around the country who identify cases and call us for our help to help them.
Is that the case with Mr. Doe? Because I called you to talk about this case, which had a pretty good outcome. Tell me how this case came to your attention.
Sure. Well, we are fortunate to have been working on a project for the last 2 years where we were partnering with the Disability Rights North Carolina. And the goal of our project was to expand the court cases, the case law that establishes the right of people with substance use disorder to get non-discriminatory health care. So our goal was to work with the folks in North Carolina to, first of all, start educating people that discrimination in healthcare settings against people with substance use disorder is illegal, violates the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws, and then to identify a case that we could bring in court that would potentially lead to a court decision on this topic. And that they found this case in North Carolina, Disability Rights North Carolina found this particular man.
So before we get to the particular case, tell me about what discrimination in healthcare might look like that, as you're saying, would be illegal. What would that look like?
I mean, discrimination basically means treating someone differently, usually badly, because of their disability. And often this is rampant for people with substance use disorder because they're so widely misunderstood by society at large, including in the healthcare system. And so it could mean denying care based on stereotypes and assumptions about what their conduct is going to be, that they're not worthy of care because they've brought their condition upon themselves, that they're not worthy of scarce resources. And so it manifests in all kinds of ways, from outright exclusion from care to subpar care to just being mistreated.
Could be, I'm not going to see you in my clinic anymore, or we're not going to offer you this surgery just because you have a history of, or you still have an addiction.
Sure. And there's cases where the Department of Justice has brought a lot of cases where a primary care doctor refused to accept a patient because they were on a buprenorphine for opioid use disorder. It can be denial of surgery, a particular surgery, especially if someone's currently using drugs, but even if they have a history of it. It could be not giving someone their methadone when they're in the hospital that they need to treat their opioid use disorder. It can be so many things, and unfortunately, it is so many things on a daily basis.
Right. So unfortunately, it keeps you pretty busy.
Unfortunately, there's plenty for us to do, yes.
All right. So let's go to this particular case. Tell me about that.
So Mr. Doe had several serious physical health problems that resulted in several hospitalizations over a 2-year period starting in 2023. Each time he was ready to be discharged, he needed to be discharged into a skilled nursing facility But no skilled nursing facilities within an hour of his home and his family would admit him once they found out about his substance use disorder and his recent use of substances. And so, because he was hospitalized several times, every time he was discharged, he ended up either in a group home once, and then he was sent home another time. And he and his family struggled to cobble together some home care for him, but it wasn't nearly enough. And so his health deteriorated. He ended up back in the hospital. And finally, on the third time, again, they couldn't find any placements nearby, but one facility about an hour's drive from his home took him, and he's been there for about a year and a half since, and he's done very well there because he actually is getting skilled nursing care. He's not needed to be rehospitalized, and he's doing well, but he's very far from his family, and so he wanted to be able to transfer to a nursing home closer to home. And he brought this lawsuit seeking admission to facilities that had excluded him. We identified 3 facilities that denied him admissions expressly because of his substance use history. And he wanted to be admitted. He wanted them to adopt anti-discrimination policies. And that's what the case was about.
It sounds like what you're saying is these denials were illegal.
Yes, our lawsuit was asserted that the denials were really based on the automatic exclusion of people with substance use disorder, especially if they were seen as kind of current or recent users of substances. They were just automatically excluded from skilled nursing facilities, and that we contended that that violates the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as another federal law called the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that prohibits federally funded healthcare providers and others from discriminating on the basis of disability. We also asserted a claim under a North Carolina statute involving kind of deceptive and fair practices.
Now, I've been familiar with your work for many years, and I think I would be somewhat intimidated to be sued by you. What was the outcome of this lawsuit?
I think they were intimidated because very early on, the nursing facility showed an interest in talking settlement. And we were able to achieve an outstanding settlement that got monetary compensation for Mr. Doe, as well as an adoption of anti-discrimination policies that say they cannot automatically exclude people based on substance use disorder, including people who are currently using substances and people who need medication to treat opioid use disorder. And also, they're going to train their staff. They're going to implement a grievance policy. They're going to monitor all their admission requests for a year. People with substance use disorder, they have to keep track, keep a log, and share it with us and Disability Rights North Carolina. So that's a huge win, especially because of the adoption of the policy.
Would it be fair to say that this settlement reflects their acknowledgement that they needed to do better in order to comply with the law?
The settlement certainly reflected their acknowledgement that they can do better. And we're hoping that other nursing facilities around the country don't wait to get sued in order to do better as well. The fact that they were willing to write a kind of comprehensive non-discrimination policy certainly indicates that they were concerned about liability.
Let me ask you about this question of active drug use.
But all we were asking for is that they evaluated our client like they would evaluate anyone. So, the kinds of concerns you typically hear from nursing facilities about people with substance use disorder is that they're going to kind of engage in misconduct. There's an assumption that they're going to have family members and friends smuggle in drugs and alcohol, that they're going to act in some kind of unruly way. This is without any basis in fact. It's just assumptions. We're saying, no, you can't just assume that of everybody. You have to find out, and was the person, for example, people can be in the hospital for weeks or months before they need to be discharged into skilled nursing facility care. So was that individual using drugs, creating problems in the hospital, or were they fine? In our situation, our client was fine. There were no issues when he was hospitalized each of these 3 occasions. So we're just saying, look beyond the mere diagnosis to see if, as you would for anybody else, whether there are issues. Does this person have a violent past? Or, can they follow rules? That's what we're asking them to do.
It seems like there's a little bit of a paradox here, which is that when you get good skilled nursing care, you're less likely to have ongoing pain and suffering, and therefore you might be less likely to have a problem with a substance use disorder. But if you're denied that, then it could actually create more of a problem for individuals. Do you think that's fair?
When you treat someone with substance use disorder, you treat them with dignity and respect and provide the care that they want and need, they're going to respond in a positive way. And if you deny people the care that they need and treat them with disrespect, it's going to be a different outcome. And so I think that's definitely true. And it's been true with Mr. Doe. I mean, he's really thrived where he is because he has been treated with dignity and respect.
How do you think this kind of settlement can spread around the country?
Well, we've been, to start off, we've been trying to publicize it. So we're grateful for the opportunity to do this podcast. And especially within the nursing home world itself. Like there's been an article about it in a kind of trade publication, and we want people who work in this industry to understand they can do the right thing, they can comply with the law, and they have to. And so what we really want is for state regulatory agencies like the departments of health that oversee nursing homes to kind of step up to the plate and start by issuing guidances and educating their own nursing homes about not just their legal obligations, but what they need to do and address their fears. And we also need enforcement authorities like the Department of Justice and State's Attorney General's office to bring some of these kinds of actions as well.
Do you think this will be your last case?
Our last, I doubt it. I mean, the problem never goes away with one lawsuit. So I think what we try to do in our litigation is push the needle. And I think we've pushed it here. And now, next time this happens, whether it's us or another lawyer somewhere in the country or a family that's advocating for a loved one, they can point to this case. And if they even do an online search, they may find this case, and then they can advocate within nursing facilities that you can't do this. This is against the law. So every case builds on what's happened before.
And Mr. Doe, did he wind up moving to one of the closer skilled nursing facilities?
Not yet. The case just recently settled. He has to apply and then be evaluated, and I don't believe that's happened yet.
But presumably it'll be a lot more fair an assessment than the one he originally had.
Exactly. And we wanted to wait until these two facilities had adopted their non-discrimination policy before he reapplied.
Sally Friedman, thank you so much for explaining all this to me and for all the work that you do.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Public Health on Call is a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, produced by Joshua Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Stephanie Desmond. Audio production by J.B. Arbogast, Michael Bonfils, Spencer Greer, Matthew Martin, and Philip Porter, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production coordination by Catherine Ricardo. Analytics by Elisa Rosen. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Thank you for listening.